Hi, everyone. Welcome. And my name is Sanjib Kalita, and I'm here as your moderator for the banking and on payment innovation session. And I'm actually in Virginia in the South, and hopefully next year in Atlanta. And we've got an amazing session today with our two speakers, Marwan and Vanessa. This will be an interactive session, so if you have questions, please do include them on the Q&A tab on your right. And I'll try to get to them and integrate them into our session. Just a quick intro, and I'll give time for the speakers to introduce themselves. But Marwan Forzley is CEO of Veem, and we actually knew each other before I had a mustache. So that's how long we've known each other. Vanessa Vreeland is head of Truist Ventures, and I'm delighted to meet Vanessa for the first time today, and looking forward to meeting in person sometime down the line. So I guess, Vanessa, it would be great if you could just give a quick introduction about yourself.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So my name is Vanessa Vreeland, and I am the head of Truist Ventures. While most of you are probably based in the South, for those of you who don't know, Truist is the new entity of the recently merged BB&T and SunTrust. We are the 6th largest bank in the United States, and we came together specifically to invest in technology. And as the head of Truist Ventures, it is the Ventures team's mission to help Truist really achieve that innovation and propel Truist to the forefront of financial services by investing in great companies such as Veem. So excited to be here today. I've spent my career investing in privately held businesses and venture-backed businesses, and I'm excited to bring that expertise to Truist. And I am also located in the South. I am in the Charlotte area, which is Truist headquartered city.
Thank you, Vanessa. How about you, Marwan?
Thank you, Sanjib. By the way, as Sanjib mentioned, I know him, I don't know how many years now, probably like 15 or something like this. So I'm the CEO of Veem. I used to run e-commerce for Western Union. And before that, I had my own company called eBillMe, which I founded and sold to Western Union. And prior to that, there was another startup that ended up with Nokia. So Veem is all about global payments, making it really simple for businesses to pay and get paid around the world. It's a wire replacement service, kind of like Venmo for businesses. We're in 110 countries, 50 plus currencies. We have about 250,000 accounts on the platform, and I'm probably the only one here that's in San Francisco.
Thank you, Marwan.
Thank you.
Actually, just a quick background about myself. I'm working on my 4th startup, Guppy, which is a credit bureau built on blockchain technology. Before that, worked on Building Money 2020, the Fintech conference, which we started and sold. And I've also worked at Citibank in credit card payments for about 9 years. And I also worked at Google after we were, before Money 2020, worked on this Fintech startup that was acquired by Google. So I've seen payments as a big bank, as big tech, as Fintech startup, and as media. So it's a very complex space, and not the easiest thing to get one's hands around. Actually, Marwan, maybe if you could start us off with, how do you think about payments, and like, is there a framework, or like, how do you make sense of sort of the diversity of payments?
Yeah, good question, Sanjib. So I usually put them in 4 different buckets. You got B2B, you got consumer to consumer, you got consumer to business, and business to consumer. These are like the big buckets. Generally, sometimes some folks also put government with business in that category. And then we split them again between domestic and international payments, because they're very different landscapes. And then it splits again by, depending on the size of customers that you're going after, by AP and AR, because they also split there. And so you end up in a sort of a mesh with different segments, macro segments, different types of use cases, and different geographies.
How about you, Vanessa?
So I think about it a little less business-oriented than Marwan does. I think about it first as a consumer, right? And some of the trends that we're seeing at Truist in the market where more folks are more comfortable transacting digitally. We've seen that really accelerate with COVID and with the pandemic. And in my own personal life, my husband and I have seen that as well. I mean, prior to COVID, we were predominantly using digital payments such as Veem or Zelle to pay our babysitters. And then we were using, automatic bill pay. But as COVID has kept us more at home, we found ourselves to be consumers of DoorDash and Instacart, and we find ourselves transacting much more frequently digitally. And the Wall Street Journal recently reported that they think the majority of customers who have moved their grocery shopping online will continue to shop online even when COVID is no longer a threat. And so at Truist, we expect that our clients on both the commercial and the consumer side will continue to integrate their real life with their financial lives, and will likely do the same. So we expect, branch traffic to continue to drop because folks will be leveraging digital channels. And so I think it's really a reflection of how we live our daily lives. And it's really all about ensuring that we've got the tools and services so that folks can continue to transact digitally in a safe and secure and just really seamless way.
Thank you, Vanessa. And I think you bring up some really great points there about some of the consumer pain points and how, as well as like how things are changing. And actually, between both Truist and Veem, I think both of these organizations are known for are serving the business needs, business community, business banking. Can you talk a little bit about how business payments might be different from consumer payments, and and also, like, if you can get into some of the pain points, that would be very helpful. Can we, Vanessa, maybe if you could start off?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So kind of sticking with my husband and I as an anecdotal customer base, we're really focused on accuracy, we're focused on security, we're focused on ease of use, and we're really focused on trusting our financial organization to ensure that the payments occur as we expect them to occur, and that there's no fraud or any intervention from third parties. And when I first joined SunTrust, I actually joined on the commercial banking side. And when I spent some time talking with our commercial clients, what I realized is that they have the same concerns. It's just at a much greater scale than me as a personal consumer. So instead of sending less than 10 payments a month, they're sending hundreds and thousands of payments a month, depending on their size and scale. And not only that, they're really focused on sending them not only domestically, but internationally as well. And so doing international payments in a secure, seamless, painless way was one of the reasons that we were so interested in Marwan and the technology he's built at Veem.
And Marwan, could you address some of the points, like as far as like the differences between consumer and B2B?
Yeah, but I mean, Vanessa summed it up really well. I would add a couple of additional things that businesses or business type transactions are different than consumers. Generally, business transactions are much larger size transactions, so the average order value is much bigger. And because it's much bigger, it starts to intersect heavier with KYC and KYB issues. So you need to invest in technology that automates that whole process. Because unlike consumer transactions, if you're sending, $50 or $100, that's a very different process than sending $500,000. So the KYC requirements are very different there. Also, business transactions tend to require integrations into systems that you use on a day-to-day basis. So like, we're integrated into QuickBooks, Xero, NetSuite, a whole bunch of accounting systems, Magento, so you're always integrating into the context of the business environment that you're in. The other thing, consumer transactions tend to have, peaks and valleys to it. Like, it's not a monotonic cycle. Business transactions, I pay my suppliers. I got to pay my suppliers every month until that relationship, stops. And consumer transactions, you'll see like big events in people's lives, like, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas, New Year, all the big events that people go through. business transactions are a lot more predictable, a lot more monotonic than consumer transactions. So these are some of the differences between the two worlds.
That makes a lot of sense.
The other thing I would add, just another important thing, consumer transactions do not require approvals. So if you're sending money to your sister, you just send money to your sister.
Yeah.
Business transactions, you need account approvals, you need payment approvals. It's just a lot more sophisticated to handle these transactions.
That's a great point, Marwan. I do think that commercial payments are much more sophisticated and have a lot more levels of verification and approvals. So thanks for raising those. Those are all really great points.
And actually, as a small business person myself, I felt a lot of these pain points that you're talking about. And especially as a business person, like you're so time starved, and you're trying to manage your life, you're trying to manage your business, which I think speaks to a little bit about the need for innovation in payments. So if we break down payments innovation into three broad categories: user experience, payment rails, operations management. One way to manage new technologies to some of these sectors or buckets might be, like user experience might be like mobile and digital platforms. Payments rails could be, blockchain and real-time payments. And operations management could include things like AI and fraud and risk management. How do you think about each of these areas in payments innovation, and perhaps even commenting about some of these technologies that I've mentioned?
So we think of the user experience to be the organizing framework. It's like the glue that ties everything together. So underneath that, there's usually plumbing, and the more elaborate the plumbing is, the more likely you're going to have a better user experience. So investments in blockchain and RTP and real-time payments and wallets, these are all examples of making a really simpler user experience that's innovative and different than what you get today. And then the other thing that's important is, I think folks in fintech generally underestimate how important it is to have the right operations framework as well. So security, fraud, risk management, KYC, AML, because, we're a regulated company, and in order to move money, you cannot actually move the money until these checks are in place, especially KYC and AML checks. And so you gotta have that whole infrastructure in place to support that user experience. I think it starts with a fundamentally different experience than what you get today. So, for example, when we think of Veem, I don't think of providing experiences that are similar to Bankwire. I think of government coming up with something totally different. But in order to have something totally different, you have to change the infrastructure underneath to deliver that. So that's where you land on, all the operations and then all the technical plumbing underway to deliver payments around the world.
How about you, Vanessa? Any thoughts about payments innovation?
Yeah, no, I think that Marwan hit the nail on the head. I would say historically, when banks think about payments and building products, it starts with the operations management, right? The fraud and the risk and the security, and the user experience really historically has been an afterthought. Mm-hmm. And so one of the reasons that we're looking for innovation in payments is because the user experience is a place where you can create a lot of pain points for your clients, asking them to continue revalidate information, continue to enter the same information more than once or twice. And so as we're looking for really great companies to invest in and partner with, we're looking for the ones similar to Veem who have addressed the UX concerns and have been really focused on the UX, but have been just as thoughtful from an operations perspective. And so we need all different aspects of those three buckets of payment innovation to work, because historically we've been really great at pieces of it, but not all pieces. And we're working to get better at the user experience piece, but we recognize that by partnering with, innovative and novel technologies and really exceptional management teams can help us accelerate delivering that user experience in a very safe and secure way.
That makes sense. And, from my days working at a bank, I know that each project is, there's significant opportunity costs there. There's significant resources that need to be aligned against that. And it's actually a very difficult decision to decide which ones to do, which ones not to do. So and especially since you are the head of Truist Ventures, how do you think about, like, if you had $100 million, how might you allocate it into each of these areas, or how would you evaluate potential projects?
Sure. So if I had $100 million, I would say I don't have enough, but but it's a good start. And at Truist Ventures, our mission is to really help shape the future of finance by helping Truist find great products and services. And the way we partner with our companies is to not only provide capital, but provide access to our industry experts across the organization and subject matter experts, but then also to learn from one another. And so, one of the exciting things about Veem was that they have, 5 rails that they utilize to send money. And a few of those rails are rails we haven't touched before, like blockchain and cryptocurrency. And so when we think about that, we think about what a great opportunity for us to learn from them and for us to help them develop their business by sharing some of our expertise. And so, when we think about how we're going to invest money, it goes to very specific things within fintech, but then it can go much further than fintech as well. I mean, we're truly looking to shape the future of finance, and that could be in traditional fintech sectors. It could be in technologies that enhance our ability to touch our clients through digital channels in a very personal way. So a lot of artificial intelligence and a lot of seamless interaction, so that someone could be texting with a bot, overnight, and then can call in the morning and, talk to a real life person, and it could be a very seamless interaction. And so we're really looking to enhance both the technology and the touch across all of our products. And we're working with our line of business partners to prioritize what those are going to be. So, it doesn't have to look a certain way. I mean, as long as it supports touch or technology and it's something that's really new and novel, we're looking to invest.
And actually, Marwan, if I can ask that question in a slightly different way, even going back to when you were creating Veem, you have so many, you have 100, maybe 1,000 different things to do. How do you figure out what to allocate your time and your organizational resources on?
Yeah, I think, actually, Vanessa summarized it really well. I think the trends we see in the market, both fintech and non-fintech, is this idea that you take a complex process, like, for example, Bankwire in the Veem world, and you simplify it and treat it like a consumer to a business audience. So you go after businesses, but the UX, the UI, the response, the interaction with the customer is consumer-like. But in order to do that, you have to take the infrastructure on the back end and do a lot of automation and simplification on the back end to be able to get that. So a lot of the investment ends up being back on the on the payment processing, on the KYC, on the operations, on the security, really like bread and butter stuff. And a lot of it is, in terms of where you start and how you prioritize. I think the customer is the best. They tell you all the things that they need, and you just see their patterns, and you follow them, and generally they lead you to a good spot.
That makes a lot of sense. And I know we're sort of getting towards the last 5 minutes or so. So it would be remiss of me not to ask the $31 million question. So for those of you that don't know, Veem recently raised $31 million in a funding round led by Truist Ventures. Marwan, let's start with you. What was it like raising, during fundraising in the lockdown? And you've done this numerous times. How is it different? How is it the same?
Yeah, the processes are the same. So like having the pitch deck and the supporting data and making sure that you have all the ducks in a row, that's all the same process. I think what's different are a couple of things. One, this is the first time I raised money all on Zoom with like zero travel. And that was, in pre-COVID, I would have done probably like 20 trips for the same amount of effort. And then second is really figuring out who would be best to partner up with. And we're fortunate to have Truist on board because, it makes a big difference when the money that also is invested contributes to longer term relationships with the party that you're working with. So that these are two important factors, I say, that are, specifically important for us this time.
How about you, Vanessa? You've been on the funding side for many years, and obviously this is a different environment. So how did you manage that, and how did Marwan get on your radar?
Yeah, so Marwan got on our radar through an investment bank, FT Partners, that Marwan had hired to fundraise, and we had known FT for a long time. And I actually had come across Marwan before he raised his seed round, and so knew of him and was really excited to reconnect. But I think Marwan summarized it well. There was a lot less travel, which was kind of nice from a personal perspective. And we really, went through the same process as we would have had we been in person. We still were able to do the same amount of diligence. So from that perspective, it was great. I would say the one thing that we missed out on is really inviting Marwan to our facilities in Truist. And while he was exposed virtually to a number of our executives, really having that face-to-face interaction is really important when you're only meeting someone once or twice. And so I didn't feel that I still felt like I got to know Marwan and his team extremely well, but we were talking multiple times a day over the course of several weeks. But I do think that not having that personal connection in person with some of our executives who maybe only met Marwan a handful of times diminished the impact that we otherwise would have had. So as soon as it gets lifted, we're going to get Marwan a haircut and then invite him out.
I like the haircut part too.
So I guess that's two of us on this panel that commented on Marwan's hair, and we've actually got one question from the audience that I wanted to bring up in the short period of time that we have. Lots of companies and countries are trying to get in on the digital payments revolution. What does it take to be successful in the US? And do you think that there's a threat or opportunity from international innovation in this space? Marwan, maybe you want to take a first crack at that.
Well, to start with, the U.S. probably is one of the more complex markets. Think of, for example, regulation. You have to have so many licenses that are state by state compared to, for example, if you're operating out of Europe, you get one license, which is the Eurozone, and you're operating in Europe. That is additional complexity that is significant overhead that you have to factor in when you're thinking of the U.S. market. Also, the other thing that's important is some of the characteristics of this market are different. So, for example, FX. Generally, there's less FX in the U.S. compared to other markets around the world. This environment tends to be more internet heavy, more card heavy. Other parts of the world are, less card centric. So there's a lot of criteria here that on the surface sounds like it's a market that look alike, Germany, for example, or Singapore, but when you dig into it, it's a very different environment.
Vanessa, how about from the investor's perspective? How do you see US in the context of the global markets, I guess?
Yeah, well, I think Marwan summarized it well, given the different regulations that are specific to the US and the higher scrutiny from a regulatory perspective that we have to ensure we adhere to. It would be pretty difficult for us to invest in a foreign company that didn't have significant US exposure already, just because it would be difficult for us to partner with someone like that. So I actually think the barriers to entry, as Marwan was describing, are fairly high unless you're actively doing business in the US today.
Okay. And I think on that note, we've got about a minute left. Do either of you have any final thoughts, or there's one more question, but I don't think we have time for that. But any final thoughts for our audience? Marwan?
I think fintech is an amazing sector actually to be in. Out of all the various sectors within the tech world, I would say fintech in particular is a sector that's going to do very well for the foreseeable future. I mean, it's a sector that has not seen innovation for a very long period of time, so we're overdue. That's why you're seeing all the activity now.
How about you, Vanessa?
Yeah, I would say from the bank side, we've really pivoted from just throwing products out into the market to see how they work, and are really focused on the voice of the customer and the customer journey, and making sure that we're not only meeting our current clients' needs, but anticipating their next need. And so I think that, as Marwan said, FinTech is right for innovation and really leading with UX and what the customer needs, even if they don't know they need it yet, is something that we're really focused on.
That's great. And on that note, that's it for us. Now let's get back to Mitchell.
Well, guys, that was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing just the story of Veem and with Truist investing in it. That is just great. And you shared so much. Our company is a user of Veem. Actually, Truist is our bank. So we feel like we're part of your same team there. We've had a great afternoon of sessions, starting with Roop and followed on by Stephen at BitPay and Catherine at Binance. It's been great. We've had Dana led a couple of sessions with some really good speakers. And then Sanjib, you just really brought it home here with Marwan and Vanessa. So we want to thank everyone for participating. Aprio has been happy to be the sponsor of this afternoon's sessions. If you'll not leave yet, because we're all going to meet up in just 4 minutes at the winery at Ponce City Market virtually. So go back to the schedule, click on the 5 o'clock session, and I'll join you for a drink. Great seeing everybody. Have a great rest of the week. Enjoy the rest of the FinTech South Conference. Thank you very much.